Lindsay. I am going to read your energetic signature. So when I went into your energy field, I saw a lioness, and she was roaring very loudly, and she was shaking her body kind of like a dog does. And what she was doing was she was getting excess energy off. And so that's kind of representative of you kind of experiencing some anxiety in this chapter of life and needing to kind of like slough that off. And the first part of this is gonna be a little bit heavy, okay? But just bear with me while we go through, okay? So your higher self said that you, throughout the years, have had a lot of feelings and emotions that have come up that you have pushed down and suppressed, which you're doing a much better job with now. Okay, we are working on actively processing those through our system, but it's just years worth of backed up things, okay? And a lot of that has turned into resentment and rage and anger, not necessarily at somebody else, but if we have a lot of unprocessed things that make us not feel seen, heard, and validated, it can just naturally turn into that. However, you have been a little bit cautious about diving into process these things because you know, either consciously or unconsciously, a lot of it is rooted in anger and rage and resentment, and we're worried if we start feeling the things that it's going to be all consuming. And another layer to this is that in the past couple of incarnations, you have taken on more of a passive role, somebody who wants to experience a lot more peace and bliss and serenity, which understand that. Okay, totally get that. But at the same time, part of the path to get there is feeling how we feel, okay, and processing those things through. And your higher self said the lioness doesn't pass judgment over herself about her feelings. She actually just feels it and transmutes it and moves forward. So some of this is a lesson of not feeling guilty for just feeling things. Okay, we're all human. We all go through experiences. We're just channeling emotions. Okay, they are not you. They are part of our human experience. Okay, but if they were us, like, then we would just be one emotion all the time, right? We wouldn't have this like fluctuation, and we need our emotions because even the heavier dense ones allow us to know and feel what the lighter vibrational ones are as well. And these heavier ones like anger and resentment and sadness and fear help us understand when something is out of alignment. So how would we know if we were on the quote-unquote right path? But how would we know if we weren't experiencing these things over here to kind of nudge us back and pivot us back towards our most aligned timelines? But one of the reasons that you had been suppressing those things is because of a safety trauma response, survival mode, just needing to do what you need to do to get through. So we also need to not pass judgment about that, okay? Because like sometimes like you don't have the tools and resources available to you, or you're really busy, and you know, not that we want to make excuses, but you understand what I'm saying, okay? Like sometimes we just gotta do it. Compartmentalize is a good word for that, okay? So then I went to a different section of your energy field, and I turned into a rabbit, but it was me as you, if that makes sense. I was seeing it in first person, and we were running down this really dark tunnel, and I was like, where the heck are we headed? But you, in this case, were your higher self as this rabbit from Alice in Wonderland, and you were trying to get Alice to where she was supposed to be going, but Alice is you in the present and in the past, okay? And your higher self is just like, trust me, okay? Like, I got us. So then when we got out of the tunnel, I saw a person that was playing with cards, and I was like, oh, are you a magician? And I don't know if you watch X-Men, but all of a sudden this magician person turned into Gambit. He's a mutant from New Orleans, and he has all these special parlor tricks that he can do specifically with cards. And you looked at me, and this is just a representative of your energy and the way that you project to people. But you said you never know what's going to be up my sleeve, and then you pulled a card out from your sleeve, and I was like, oh. And your higher self said that, let me read what there's an unpredictability about you that's very appealing to others, because you help them break out of their straight lines. Okay, like they think that there's only one type of living and that they have to follow like these very specific plans or narratives or what society expects of them. But then somebody like you comes along and is like, well, I'm doing this or I'm doing that, and they're like, what? We can do that? And so like we can make pivots at different times during our life, and that to me almost seemed contradictory with the way that you view yourself. Like, I think you view yourself as more of a predictable type of person, but comparatively to others, no. You are willing to make shifts when you are feeling stuck and stagnant, even if they don't make quite logical sense to you or sense to other people. You are willing to invest in yourself and listen to your intuition and your internal guidance for what is in highest alignment with you, and make those adjustments when needed. So then I went into a different section of your energy field, and I was serving as your energy body in this moment, so I could see first person, and I looked down at my feet and I was like, what the heck? And they were like all red, and they almost look like, I don't want to say like chicken feet, but like similar to that. Okay, and not chicken feet, it'll make sense. Okay, so I looked down and I was like, okay, and then I look up, and all of a sudden I'm outside of this being looking at it, and it was a Chinese fire dragon, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. However, this dragon was like breathing fire everywhere, like spewing it, spitting it out, and it was so anxious and frazzled, and I was like, oh, okay, we need to calm down. And I started playing some harp music, like just had it on like in the ethers, and then I walked over to him and I put my hand on his head and I said, peace. And all of a sudden he took like this big breath and stopped spitting the fire, and I asked your higher self, what's going on here? And apparently you were a Chinese fire dragon in a different incarnation. Higher self said that's one of the reasons that you have been afraid to feel some of these feelings that have been backed up, because you know how destructive anger and fire can be. Okay, those are like interchangeable with one another. This dragon, when I went to go meet him, he was a baby and he was 100 years old, or like around that time, and so like the length of span of lifetime is much different than like us humans, and so he was still a baby even though he's like 100 years old. And your higher self was saying like he was still learning how to control these abilities within self, kind of like how you in the first chapters of your life were also learning how to control these aspects of self, not in a negative controlling way, but just having good self-regulation. But she said as he got older, he learned the tools and resources that he needed and was able to harness them for his benefit and the benefit of others. And you're in that chapter of your life too, so you got to trust yourself more, that like, hey, I've been amassing tools and resources so that we don't have a self-implosive moment, okay, where this anger, the sacred rage is going to be all consuming. This is something that we can transmute for the benefit of self and others, because that sacred rage and anger can actually be really, really productive fuel to make effective changes in the collective consciousness shift. And then your higher self said something that can help you create forward movement here is to look up what sacred rage is in the context of spirituality, because it's going to show you how that is a blessing and how it can be useful in ways that you can fine tune it to be something that's really positive in your life. And so I want to thank you so much for letting me read for you, and I hope you have an amazingly magical day.